This podcast was recorded 3 days before Amazon decided to drop the news that they were delaying the New World release until spring 2021, so keep in mind that some things are now outdated. Hello and welcome to the D Word, brought to you by Team Dix. Visit us at www.teamdix.com for information on our community, game servers, merchandise, giveaways, and much more. And make sure to check out and subscribe to our very own Chuck Dix as he transitions to streaming live on YouTube. With the upcoming release of Amazon Game Studios' massively multiplayer online role-playing game New World that quite a few Team Dix members have their eyes on, we've decided what better topic to talk about than the vast world of MMOs. Join Dyslexic Yoda,
Hey, what's up, nerds?
myself, Silent Whisper, and our special guest hosts, Aggressor
Hey, thanks for having me.
and Chuck Dix,
How's it going, guys?
as we discuss the games we've played, their impact on the real world, and what we'd like to see for the future of this hugely popular and sometimes life-stealing genre of games. So MMOs first came on back in the 70s, I think was the first real, what they considered MMO, but we're not going to go back that far. I think what most people think about when they hear MMORPG is, for me anyway, I think back Ultima Online in the early 90s, mid 90s was, I think a lot of people consider the grandfather of MMOs. Personally, I never played it, but I know that was the big one, and then a couple years later, you get Everquest came out, and that's, I think, really what blew up, or not blew up, but started the upward popularity trend of MMORPGs.
How do you define an MMO? I mean, massively multiplayer online game, right? But besides a bunch of people playing online together, is there certain things that sort of define what an MMO is?
Yeah, I think the main one you just hit on was massively multiplayer. It's game servers online that thousands of people can play at the same time in the same world. Everything you do affects everybody else's gameplay. Usually there are PvP, you can play against other players and battling. There's PvE versus other computer-generated AI enemies. There can be dungeons and raids and...
So I guess I'd never played Ultima Online, but is there sort of a storyline for that, or what's that about?
Ultima Online, I couldn't, like I said, I did not play that one, but usually they have a storyline, a loose base, and you do quests that progress that storyline.
How about you, Chuck or Yoda? Did you guys play Ultima Online?
You know, actually, I did. But before we jump into the UO stuff, I was thinking about, the MMO genre and your question about what makes what is the category or how is it defined an MMO. And I mean, typically, like nowadays, I was thinking about this, and any game where you're connecting to people through the cloud or whatever on the internet, you if you have like a huge group of people, like massive, I don't know how to put a number to what massive is, but that I would consider like most games MMOs now, like Call of Duty or something, even like just if you're connecting online, I guess that's an MMO. No.
Oh yeah, definitely. MMOs as a base is broad-reaching. You look at like League of Legends, Defense of the Ancients, like they're both MMOs. We're more talking about the RPG aspect, which I think is the original. Like when I say MMOs, I'm talking about RPG MMOs, because MMO was more just RPGs back when I was playing them.
I think that's kind of where it got its popularity from. But I mean, Chuck brings up a good position or a topic on that, right? Like, I mean, what really defines the massive multiplayer? Because games are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and more people. Like, look at the games that we're playing. You've got 100 people playing together. I guess really, yeah. What does define the massive multiplayer? Is it a story, or is it just the fact that you've got hundreds of people playing continuously at the same time?
On the UO side of things, Ultima Online, that was actually something that I had planted roots in a long time ago. I was, I believe, 12 years old, and um, this was in like 90s, 99 maybe. And basically, I was moving all over the world with my mom and stepdad. So we ended up going to like this little game shop, and I was actually getting some trading cards. I was into Pokemon back then, and there was all these computers set up, and all these nerds were sitting around playing this game. And I was like, what are they doing? How are they all playing the same game? What is this? In like a very naive, like 12-year-old, mindset, politely asked. And she's some older gentleman. He was probably like 60 years old. And I'll never forget this because I was like, wow, you're kind of like my grandfather, but you're telling me about computer games. He was like, this is Ultima Online. Here, let me show you. And he shows me like, his character. It's a game about there's dragons and questing. It's you play as a character. You play as a human. You don't play as like trolls and stuff like that. Like which is what World of Warcraft kind of spearheaded and owned later on. Maybe EverQuest too. But yeah, Ultima Online was, I guess, the first MMO, and I obsessed over it for years and years and years.
Yeah, I kind of had a similar experience. My older cousin played Ultima Online, and I used to go over his house a lot. And I was about 12 or so when I saw him playing it, and I immediately was like, I want to play this game. But being 12, my parents were like, oh no, you can't do that kind of stuff yet. So unfortunately, I didn't get in on the Ultima Online train.
I guess I also see that like having a persistent open world is one of the definitions of an MMO. So, having it so that the game doesn't end, it's continuous and people can come and go as they please. Is another definition of it.
That's what came to mind for me personally, to like separate every other game, like Sea of Thieves. I mean, I get, is that persistent? I don't know, but yeah, having that open world aspect where you like actually live in it, that is something that was like mind blowing back in the late 90s, right?
Oh yeah, where like everything, even if you logged off, that world is still going on. There's other people still playing, and just because you hit exit and log out doesn't mean that the game stops, like most other games or like other multiplayer games where it's more like match based, where you're in that instance and then the game's over, and it's you go in another instance and that game's over. MMOs to me are it's a whole nother world in the computer.
Yeah, I mean, in that, for me, growing up, in the 90s when the internet first started kind of taking off and you're getting the mix of games and everything, for me, I had just a little bit of taste of online gaming, but it was initially EverQuest was my first real jump into the online world, and man, it grabbed me. Like, I mean, it was just I was obsessed with it. Like, I spent more time in the game than I did anything else, and that was working, or I mean, and even to the point like spending time with family. But as I was teenager. Late teens at that point, and I mean, there's I was living in a rural area at the time too, so it's not like I wasn't able to socialize as easily as today. Like, socializing is so different because of the internet, but back in the 90s, man, that was we had chat rooms, right? Like, that was how people communicated online back then, and then now you've got this world where you can see a 3D avatar of someone like in front of you and talk and communicate and start having like these relationships and friendships with people. It was something else, man. Like, I'd never
you bring
seen
up a
anything
very
like
good
it.
point about the addictive nature of MMOs. I had some personal experiences with that as well. It's easy, or it was easy at the time when you have a little less experience. As a community, or as people in general, just dealing with other folks online. It's more of an everyday thing now, but back then I would see people, families addicted to games where they would sit together. And I remember one instance in particular. My wife and I went to visit some friends, and they were out of state, and we went there, and they had a World of Warcraft event that they had to attend. And so they were in their office playing on their computers while we were visiting them from out of state in their living room. And they were like ignoring their kids, and it was pretty awful. So yeah, the addicting nature of these games, especially in the early days, was really eye-opening for me.
Oh yeah, I wanted to bring up that little subtopic of the effects that MMORPGs could have on lives, both good and bad. And you brought up just a part of the bad, both of you, with Dyslexic Yoda saying how that's what he was doing, like instead of working or whatever, and the addiction that people could have. I definitely was addicted, especially when World of Warcraft came around. But I don't look like it was bad because I didn't have too much else going on in my real life, so it kind of took over as my actual life. And for some people, that's how it is. Some people, like, they live to play this virtual life they created.
Right. And I think, the whole MMO thing, I think, has a little bit for everyone. Right? People play games for various reasons. I think a big part for me was, even when I was playing Everquest, like a lot of time I was just talking to other people, right? Like it was just communicating with other individuals, like they had an interest in video games and they were much like me. And so I think, but then you've got the games where people, maybe they just want to jump on and do, the quests or the missions or whatever it is that the game's got. But yeah, there is a definite draw to it. There can be negatives, but there's a lot of positives too, man. Like I've met some amazing people through, these games. Hell, we're all here sitting here because of video games. So there's a lot of pluses, but it's like anything, moderation, right? Like you do anything that's in excess, there's going to be repercussions for that.
In the mind, how we deal with this new form of entertainment came around, the internet, and then video games tied to that, and then how our brain just kind of adapted, and what we were essentially like early access testers to, for all these psychologists, to see. It's still going on, right, with all the kids who are whose parents are saying they can't stop playing Fortnite or whatever. So I think there's still like so much research going on, but like for me personally, I was moving around so much because my parents' work. It was almost like every 2 months we would move to a whole new part of the States. He had a very specialized. My stepdad had a very specialized role and in his company. So I loved it because I loved the MMOs because I got to stay connected to folks. But I also like crushed bicycles and skateboarding. Like every time I moved to a new place, it was like, cool, I'm gonna go explore the entire city or town or whatever. But then I could like touch base with all the homies or the friends at that time in my life in the video game while I was moving. So it was a cool thing. But that also transitioned into being interested in technology and spurring an interest in programming and how does this all work and stuff. So
yeah, Yoda, you mentioned there's something for everyone, or something for a lot of people, probably different aspects of MMOs. It made me think of, another, I don't know, aspect. I wouldn't say necessarily negative, but there are people who farm, right? Farmers, they call them, I guess, where they, level characters or they farm for gold or whatever resources and then sell it in real life online. And you mentioned New World in the intro, and my understanding is that New World is a player-driven economy, so you can't sell stuff to NPCs. I wonder how the farming will work in this case.
I mean, you bring up an interesting topic, man. Like, growing up in the Everquest and Warcraft, man, like, I had a buddy that made a lot of money just leveling up characters and selling that stuff. Like, there's a whole market, and then there's a whole other market, right? Like the whole I don't know, illegal, but like they're just farming factories, right? They're just making money and then selling that stuff. So I mean, is it good? Is it bad? I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever had any negative interactions with any of that. So I mean, I can't say that it's affected me directly. So I don't really have any experience with it outside of like a buddy that did the leveling up thing.
I actually did that myself briefly for a little bit in World of Warcraft. I was probably like 15, 16, and I would buy the game for $60. I'd get the free month it came with, and I would no life to level 60, which was a lot of playing when it first came out, and then I could go and sell that account for $200-300.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Yeah.
I would buy the game again, play a different class to 60, and then I would sell it for $200-300. And certain classes in World of Warcraft would sell for more money. Like a priest would sell for more than a warrior, just because it would be easier to level up a warrior than it would be a priest. And that was like 15, 16 years old for a month of playing, making $200-300. It was good money.
Well, and that raises another interesting topic too, like the concept of digital property, right? I mean, that was a whole brand new thing to me in EverQuest, like learning that you could buy either platinum or gold, or you could buy equipment. Like that was just it's a whole new concept. Well, not now. I mean, now it's kind of old hat, but back then it was hard to believe that people would spend hard money on things that didn't exist. And now, I mean, guilty. Like I do it all the time. Like, I did that today on my little cowboy character in Red Dead. I mean, it's interesting to see how the whole economy and market of these games have changed over the years.
When I think of the player-driven economy, it makes me think of RuneScape. And I don't remember if that was strictly player-driven or not. It's been a long time since I played it, but I do remember buying runes and selling runes, just buying them for cheap and selling them for a profit, just rebuying and reselling and just making more and more gold off of it. I wonder I imagine something like that will happen in New World until it sort of levels out. And then, certain items, it will become quickly apparent what, stuff is worth, right? And I always like to see like the unique items, like something that you just wouldn't expect to be worth very much, but people are paying an incredible amount for it, like toilet paper, for example. when it's in low supply, man, the price really goes up. That is fascinating to me.
Yeah, another thing is the storytelling aspect, like the ideas that these founders or creators had to bring this to life back in the earlier days, and even now. It's always just really impressive to me that they can create this imaginary world or situation, put it into something that you can get hands-on with and dive into and fall in love with, and meet people, have a great time with them, or hate, gain enemies. So I think that that's always been something that's really impressive, like figuring out who is kind of creating these games and what are their backgrounds, that kind of thing. They're really smart people.
Well, you hit a really good point on like storytelling, right? I mean, stories it's I think one of the biggest things that drives us as humans, and video games are able to deliver these stories in ways that we're able to interact with them in ways that we've never been able to do in our history. So it's just,
I get chastised for this regularly, but I can't sit through a movie, and I blame video games, because I would rather create my own story and be able to tell my character, run from the bad guy or go after the bad guy or something, to sit there and have to be punished and have no say in it Kills me.
Well, in your case, you're sitting at your computer for 12 or 14 hours a day looking at 5 screens, and slowing down to one screen has got to be difficult for you.
But you left out the key part of that whole thing, and it's dominating bad guys.
Yeah.
I'm not running from Jason. I'm not sitting at the top floor of the 4-story building while he's coming up. Okay, I've already jumped out the window. I can't stand to watch that.
I don't run from bad guys, actually. I run toward them.
There you go. There you go.
For some people, that's what MMOs are all about. There are some people that are strictly playing MMOs to cause other people personal agony, and they get the joy from griefing others and constantly PvP, killing them, camping their bodies. Like, there are some people that's why they play it. Like you said, there's something for everybody in an MMO. And some people get that sadistic pleasure being an a-hole, just completely ruining somebody else's playtime.
Yeah, no question about it.
Yeah, it's the power, I think, right? Like, they get to feel, in control of somebody else's emotions. And when you're able to kind of get control of that, it's a really weird thing. And, especially if you start to show rage, that just feeds the trolls and whatnot. But
I will say, like, now if you're like on like a role playing server, that stuff's a lot of fun. You roll up on quote unquote the enemy, right? And now you get to dish out some hate and discontent. So that could be a lot of fun. But yeah, the whole just the trolling just to be trolling is, I mean, it is what it is. And it's.
What's your history, Aggressor, with MMOs? What was your first one? And
I don't know. I put a lot of time into World of Warcraft. In fact, going into, Silent, you mentioned the positive aspects of MMOs and those effects. I found, surprise, that the organization of a guild and leadership within a guild, getting people together, working as a team toward common goals, that was the most rewarding for me. I went a little overboard myself with World of Warcraft, and I had some negative effects on my family life. So I actually shut that down and for a few years, and then I got into Rift, which is another MMO, as you probably know. And apparently in New World there are rifts that open, and bad guys come out, and then you take your characters over, you fight them, and close the rift. So it sounds like it's very similar. So that'll be a neat aspect to see in New World for me, just to kind of take me back to the Rift days.
I think that's what the video games that are coming out now, like the New World, are chasing, is the nostalgia that we have from these older titles, the teamwork, the camaraderie, the leadership, components, the working towards the common goal. You're right. That's so much fun. You get a feeling of accomplishment. I didn't play World of Warcraft, but I understand there's raids, and you kind of go and fight these like crazy like areas, and everybody's working together. I think that I hope New World does something good in the genre, because Lord knows everybody has been trying to create something that's just like taking the world by storm, like UO or Everquest in the late 90s, or World of Warcraft in the early 2000s. And I mean, I don't know, like Rift probably may have been a big game, but I didn't play it. But I can't really say that there's been a huge MMO stateside anyways that has just like consumed everybody, right?
Yeah, I definitely think the genre has been on the downtrend for the last probably 5 or 6 years, I'd say, is when World of Warcraft finally peaked and started going down. So I'm hoping that New World can bring it back up a little bit. I don't think it's ever going to reach the popularity it was back around, say, 10 years ago. So I'm hoping that something fresh will come along, like New World, and help reinvigorate.
Yeah, as far as I can tell from New World, there's not anything that's groundbreaking, right? There's I suppose, except the player-driven economy, and the lack of NPCs selling areas. Oh, and there's another thing. There aren't any classes, right? So you don't get any class perks. That is something that's new, and it seems a little dumbed down, which is not necessarily what you're looking for. So it'll be interesting to see those effects.
I'm actually interested in that because I played Star Wars Galaxies for a lot of years, and they didn't have a dedicated class system for the first while that it came out. They were all skill point based. I believe New World is like weapon based. Whatever you're equipped with determines your like skills and stuff. But I prefer that because it like I'm not a guy who likes to make alts on alts on alts, where the class-based MMOs, you're that class on this character, you're another class on another character. I just want one character that I could dedicate all my time and effort into, and I want that to be my guy. And the fact that I won't be tied down to a certain class or skill set.
That's how UO was, and that's, Aggressor, you bring up a good point. Like, these games, what are they bringing that's new? And for me personally, to experience, to have a new experience in a form of entertainment, for me, a video game that is unique, is something that always draws my attention and keeps my attention for a while. UO is obviously all over the internet, and no game had really done that. And then I think World of Warcraft probably came out, and that was like the class system. And there was Guild Wars 2 or Guild Wars, and then BDO later on, and I think Elder Scrolls Online was probably popular and stuff. All these games probably had a much larger population than UO, which I think had like a concurrent user base of like 100,000 like paying. I can't remember what the actual number is, so I'm not a living Wikipedia. But the fact is that creating a new experience is what impresses me the most with these people, the creators, the founders. And that's why I mentioned that they're smart, because if they get this right, then it's just interesting. It's fascinating to me.
Well, that art style too, like I don't know, that I like how bright and it just draws you in. So I like the world that they've shown so far. I'm very interested to be able to walk around in it and see it more in more detail.
Oh, definitely. I grew up, probably my first favorite game I played on the PC was Warcraft 2. Warcraft 2 Battle.net. So when World of Warcraft came out and I got into beta for that, the fact that I was just like in that world, everything's 3D, that's what got me hooked in Warcraft or World of Warcraft. Just being in that actual world and like living in it, essentially.
Before we jumped into this, I was looking for my early access email that I signed up for years ago when I heard about New World, with like Amazon backing it. I'm actually really confident that they'll be able to do something good here. Amazon hasn't really, to my something that I can think about. Like, they acquire companies and succeed. They don't really spin up things and then fail and then have to spin them down. So I actually have a lot of faith in this title.
I had a little more faith before Crucible.
No, that's true. Crucible did take a huge dump recently. Yeah, it was you couldn't get a game, right? There wasn't enough players to even play a game. For I think 40 minutes we sat in there, and.
But I mean, it's a different genre, so I'll give them that. You don't need to find a game to jump into a game for an MMO. So if anything, Amazon's got the servers behind them to support an MMO, and I'm hoping and looking forward that that'll give New World a chance, because they have their server base, it's their own servers, and they have pretty much unlimited amount of money behind it to support it for a while if it's not doing well off the bat.
We hope.
Yeah, and I think those two things are heavily in Amazon's favor for this to be a success. If it's not New World, which it might be, I'm actually, like I said, I'm pretty confident in it. I think their studio is gonna be pumping out some incredible stuff. If not now, then in the future. So
One of the biggest banes of MMOs is launch date. So if there's a company that can support a wide world launch, I would think it's Amazon.
They have already pushed the launch date back a couple months, I think, right? Understandably, I think.
Quite a few times, yeah.
Yeah, once they do it, if they can do it and not lag people out, that would be great.
And that's a huge undertaking because, I mean, not even a year, maybe it was about a year ago now, Blizzard launched WoW Classic, and I was there for day one of that, and you had to wait in queue line for hours just to get in. So,
Oh, I remember seeing that. I would watch streamers
Yep.
sit there and wait to get in. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Another thing is, since you brought up WoW Classic and Yoda was talking about, the sort of the scenery and how things look and stuff. I didn't really read into what WoW Classic was. I figured it was the same game, but like maybe they would, enhance the graphics. I mean, from 20 years later or whatever it was, and no, it was exactly the same game. Hugely disappointing at the time. When World of Warcraft first came out, it was amazing, right? The stuff that they had, the things that you could see, the places you could go. But you try to relaunch it in today's day and age, and it was a big disappointment to me to see, knowing what our machines are capable of now and our software is capable of, that they didn't just at least try to change up the graphics, even if they wanted to keep the base game the same. So I also look forward to that in New World. Apparently, it looks tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, you make me think. It's kind of cool that on the flip side of that coin, right? That there's these older games that there's thousands of people still playing vanilla versions of, World of Warcraft and Everquest, and it's just kind of crazy to think that even 20 some odd years later, there's still people playing these games.
player-run servers, yeah. I mean, when there was a split in Ultima Online, I think it was like 2001. They're always coming out with content or trying to push new content, so players have to keep grinding. There was like a huge petition for this specific release not to come out because it was game changing, and that's when I first experienced player-run servers and got to be a part of the leadership of player-run servers for games and adminning, and I think that was I think it's really cool. And with WoW coming out with that vanilla, right? I know there was a lot of vanilla WoW servers that were player-run servers or shards, and you wonder how they're making out.
Well, I know there were private WoW servers that emulated what Classic is, and they had the biggest one had upwards of 1 million players, and I know Blizzard went after and shut a lot of them down once they made it known that, hey, we're releasing this game and we want the money, which they have every right to do. But I'm sure there still exists some smaller run private servers.
Absolutely.
I hop on Star Wars Galaxies has a private server. I know EverQuest has them. Hell, just earlier today, because we had this topic on my mind, I hopped into the old Sims Online private server, they exist, you just gotta find them. And yes, I played Sims Online quite a lot.
I didn't know that was online.
For a brief couple of years, yeah. It was back right after Sims 1. Maybe Sims 2, I'm not sure, but it was just socializing and stuff, which I needed back then, so I found it online and MMOs.
So what do you guys think? Is this freaking New World going to launch on the date they're saying now, or are we going to keep pushing it back? What do you think they're going to do here?
I don't see how they could push it again. I suppose anything's possible, but I think they'll launch it on time next month, as far as I can tell. And I believe the beta comes out in a couple of weeks on the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the 23rd or the 24th. But yeah, when they pushed it back the last time, there was like still a month or two before the beta, like the closed beta for pre-orders. But now the pre-order beta is, like you said, in a couple weeks. I don't think they will at this point, and it seems that because they're giving more access to the alpha or the beta now, I think they're confident in releasing it. Hopefully.
Yeah, so people were playing in the alpha, and there are YouTube videos out with their comments. They were not allowed to record their gameplay, but there are some pretty good reviews out there, comprehensive sort of things that talk about how the game goes, and so yeah, that's a good point. The alpha seems to have been successful, so it's looking good for the beta.
Yeah, I know that a couple of those people made the big stink not that long ago because they switched to PvP system, which honestly, as a casual, I'm not gonna complain about because I'm not big on the PvP on a lot of games. So I think it's an opt-in system now instead of being just a static PvP based game. So I'm glad that you have to opt in.
Yeah, that should be the only way you do it. I mean, to avoid harassment or zergs, things like that.
Yeah, or just have separate server, like WoW has PvE servers, PvP servers. Like, not everybody wants to PvP. I just want to go in and quest, build my character's life, and have a good time doing it. And if I ever do decide to PvP, I can go and do a battleground or something.
Yeah.
That's interesting. The decisions they have to make that can like be game breaking or can deter customers from staying involved, whether it's a housing system that you can't keep up the taxes because, well, guess what? Like, I'm not 12 anymore. I'm not 15. Like, I have responsibilities and all the stuff that I grinded for with my team, whatever, like we got busy. Now the house is like whatever gone. All that stuff is whatever decayed. That can really just like send the whole, user base packing. Like, all right, I'm going to go back to my hour and a half match on whatever league or Hell Let Loose or whatever it is and just keep it simple.
I think that's true to a point. Like, when you look at, like, we were talking about WoW Classic and retail WoW now, I think a lot of people wanting Classic was rose-tinted glasses, that nostalgia. But I went into WoW Classic and I was like, yeah, I remember, like, why I stopped playing old WoW for a long time, because you need to dedicate your life to do anything. Whereas retail, like the retail WoW, I think it's called now, like the regular base WoW, you can hop in and do so much stuff in a half hour of playing because of how easy it is, to the point where I don't really enjoy playing WoW anymore because it's too easy. So I hope New World has some kind of actual difficulty curve, I guess, where I have to invest some actual time to learn and how to do things. Like, for when I go on my World of Warcraft character, I can literally play without even looking at the screen when I'm fighting enemies. It's the same 1, 2, 3, 4 button, 1, 2, 3, 4 button, like same button maps. Like, it's just, they made that WoW too easy, and I hope New World doesn't follow that.
Yeah, so apparently that is a huge change. The fighting takes some intense concentration, from what I understand. You talked about battlegrounds too. I don't think there are battlegrounds in this, or at least not yet. So that might be something that they need to look into.
That's what Ultima Online did 2 years in. Learning, like being the earliest, I guess, adopter of the genre, creator of the genre. They ended up splitting the world in half. You went through like a portal or something, and well, initially everybody was like fair game. You were just slaughtering the innocent if you wanted to or whatever. But then people were like, I just wanted to like grow my plants and whatever they wanted to do, just not PvP. So they took that PvP world and cloned it and then just created a duplicate of it. And you couldn't like kill people in the other side. But that was very controversial and people didn't like it. And like I said, I'm just really interested to see like what they thought about, in making these decisions and how they see like their their 5-year plan going.
I'm one of those people that's like, I just want to build my farm. Which I actually did. They had in World of Warcraft for a while with Mr. Pandaria. You got a farm, and I'd log in every day to do my daily quests to grow my farm and make sure my crops were grown. And that's probably when I had no life in WoW.
I don't think there's a problem with it personally. I think it's an action that brings people, if done in the right way, it can be relaxing. It can be, just kind of like zen you out for a bit. At some point, right, you've got bills to pay, so you got to do something. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to veg out, right? That's what movies are. That's what any other hobby or pastime is.
Well, I mean, it really all depends on your play style or what you're looking forward to. Like I remember having ult accounts, PvP and then PvE, to do just exactly that, the PvE where I just want to kind of veg out and level up and enjoy my time without being harassed. And then with the PvP, being able to go out and then have that danger always kind of looking over your shoulder, like, okay, who's going to jump me? Or, depending on what game you're playing, they might be able to walk off with everything that you have too. So there's that danger aspect to it that I do like from the PvP. You can have one day you can come up on a windfall, and then the very next day lose everything.
Full loot PvP.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure. I'm pretty positive there were MMOs that were similar like that too, where if you died, your equipment was gone. Like they could take whatever they wanted off your body.
I personally love that idea. I just don't have time for it anymore. That's what Ultima Online was, full loot. Like you get so much pleasure out of knowing somebody was grinding to get this whatever item, and then now you got it, and you were just good enough to to beat them wherever on the battlefield or whatever, and now you got it. But when you lose it, it sucks.
Are we ready to talk about future games or what we'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Like VR's taking off. I would love to have talk about no lifing. I would love to have a VR MMO that was actually really good, like Ready Player One-esque. Something where you put that headset on and you are your character in that world. But I think that's still quite a whiles away. I hope it comes in our lifetime anyway.
But I think it's coming, right?
I definitely think it's on the way. I think it's probably at least a decade out from being something good if it does come soon, especially if they can make some kind of haptic features affordable for casual gamers or everyday gamers. Otherwise, I don't think it's got to be affordable. That's the thing. And we see that with the Quest and everything now. It's getting there. So I think at least a decade before we see some kind of iterations of it, and then probably another decade after that before it's good.
Yeah, you have VR chat, right? And where you're looking at someone else, they can modify their character to be whatever it is. You can see their hand gestures. You can move around with them on a relatively limited basis, and so that interaction part is there. And then you've got games where you can play in VR. It's just a matter of putting the two together and making it an MMO. And that's definitely, I agree. 10 years, 10 years might actually be a little on the long side. It's just they have to, in my opinion, they have to make the VR gear something that people can wear for a long time. Right now, it's a little heavy, a little bulky. If you're going to have a good set, it's got to run to an expensive machine. But they're making a lot of progress with it.
Yeah, I mean, they've got to be able to hit the census for it to really take off. But messing with the Rift, there's so much more of a pull on the story side. You get that emotional tug when you look at someone in VR, knowing that whether it's VR chat or playing Star Trek, whatever, you're looking at someone, you're kind of seeing their movements in their hands. I mean, I know it's still, doesn't look perfect, but for the brain, it's like, holy crap, there's a person that's actually moving their arm, doing this, that, and whatever to make that actually happen. Whereas, playing EverQuest, I'm looking at a screen and it's just a keyboard. There's still a screen between us, and with the VR, it's so much more. Everything is around you, and then to have the multiplayer aspect to that, yeah, I'm really looking forward to when that starts to get, I guess, more smoothed out in the next decade. Because I think movement, for me is really what has not chased me away, but kept me from fully diving into VR. The movement, not being able to, you can't really feel things. Again, you're holding these controllers that mimic hand movement, but at the same time, like, you're looking at your hand, yet you're holding a controller. So they've got to figure that thing out. They've got to do some sort of like Power Glove, 2020 edition.
There's actually companies working on that. I know I've seen videos even 2 years back with haptic feedback gloves and everything for VR.
Yeah. I have also seen videos of that. They just gotta, they gotta get it made and make it so that it can run on most people's PCs.
Yeah, if someone could figure out how to do weight by wearing gloves and just being able to touch a wall and at least give you the sense that there's something there, that's going to be a game changer for VR. Absolute game changer.
Well, I think on the VR genre, you got VR, then you got AR. So the augmented reality side of things is something that I'm actually more interested in and think could be quicker because being out and active in the world is more. I don't know. I feel it's nice to move around, like you're saying, Yoda. Like, for example, Ingress, when that came out, I think Google ended up acquiring it. But even Pokemon Go, right? Like, you're running around and like you're in this augmented reality state where it's a massive multiplayer online game, I guess. And but you're in the world. Like, so with Ingress, you were running around and like seeing this like digital, I don't know, there would be like a landmark and you would take a picture of. Same with like Pokemon Go, essentially. There's points of interest and you'd have to go there and do stuff. So I don't know.
Yeah, and or build stuff, have your own sort of store maybe, or go and kill bad guys or whatever in the AR. Yeah, that's a neat concept.
Yeah, AR's. I think I agree with Chuck. I think AR is going to be much more used than VR. I think VR has. They both have their places, but with AR, I mean, the world is used, right? And I think it's gonna AR probably change the way our society is too, right? Like, an apartment doesn't necessarily have to have anything on the walls anymore. Do you want the walls to be blue? I mean, through your glasses. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves as well. Yeah, AR, I'm super pumped about, man. It still has a little ways to go. I mean, they've got to miniaturize it, but it's getting there. Again, the next decade is very promising for video games and AR.
You have any kind of thing you'd like to see, Aggressor, on future MMOs?
Yeah, well, I am a runner, and I know a bunch of people can't run, so let's put a running aspect in there. No, I don't know. I just like I said before, I think we have the very beginning of what could be something like the Oasis from Ready Player One. I think we'll see it sooner than later. I don't think we'll have some big evil corporation that we'll have to take down, but maybe, But yeah, I would love to see something like that, and something. It's a MMO. It's just on a new level with VR. I think we're not far away.
I definitely agree, and I really look forward to those days, and I hope that they are sooner than later. But I believe with that, we conclude this episode of The D Word, MMORPGs. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure to keep an eye out for New World coming out August 25th. I'm sure it's going to be a Team Dick's hot spot for a while. So thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple iTunes. Thank you again.